What's up, Navigators? Been a while. My name is Mike Hess. I am the COPD dude, as they call me, or as my good friend Joe calls me, the mucus guy. Joe checking in from down Atlanta way ish. For those of you who either don't know or who perhaps have forgotten, because it's been quite a while since we've been able to do one of these things. Boy, the picture quality should use some improvement. But anyway, I am the administrator of a group on Facebook and a channel on YouTube called COPD Navigator, where we aim to bring people in the COPD community, be they people with COPD, their caregivers, clinicians, primary care, respiratory therapy, nurses, physicians. I don't know if we've had a pulmonologist join yet, but we've got all kinds of people who we all want to get talking from the same chapter here, singing from the same choir book, whatever your metaphor of choice is. And we want to improve advocacy for COPD stuff. So it's been a while. I have had those of you who are longtime viewers of the program know there's been some fairly significant upheaval in my life, other than the ever-present elephant in the room, which has not been, of course, I know it's not anything compared to what many in the community are facing right now. But as a public health person, it's been stressful to watch. So, but we're trying to, in the face of a lot of bad news out there and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of concern and a lot of all kinds of stuff, want to try to bring some semblance of normalcy, however those syllables go together. We want things to be a little bit, we want to give a little slice of normal back to the people, so to speak. Around here, normal used to look like fairly regular episodes of this program or its predecessors. This is COPD Navigator House Call, where we take a look at some of the things that are most breaking in the world of COPD. We'll also have time to answer lots of questions, clear up concerns. Of course, we can't offer medical advice or anything like that, but what we can do is give people the information they need to be their own best advocate, to go back to their clinicians, and hopefully get the right questions answered with the right answers. So, while I'm rambling on a little bit here, we do have a few things to talk about. Unfortunately, I did not, despite having a week of planning, of course, as stuff goes, was not able to put together some the cool graphics and things like that I usually do. We've got our usual, our good frame here, which is nice. But we do have some exciting news to share, as a matter of fact. A couple weeks ago, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. It feels like a couple of months ago. Time really has no meaning anymore. I was fortunate enough to participate in an event called Impact 2020, where, again, stakeholders from throughout the COPD community, a lot of people living with the condition, caregivers, just the studio here. It's been another thing that we've been doing here, is modifying the studio a little bit. You can see a different background, so I don't have quite all of my safe spots to reach yet. But what we had a whole bunch of people, for a whole bunch of stakeholder groups from the COPD communicator, doing a virtual lobbying effort. We met with my group, contained myself. I think we had we had myself, we had a liaison from the COPD Foundation who was the driving force behind the event. We had one person with COPD, and we had one person from the industry who has created a rather ingenious way to do remote monitoring and titration of oxygen. So that was a cool thing. And we talked to state legislators from throughout Michigan, or federal legislators from throughout Michigan. My local rep, we talked to, I believe we had both senators' offices on here. We had a couple other representative offices from around the state. Just asking for a couple of different things to do, most notably telehealth. We have definitely seen over the last 6 months or so how important telehealth can be to providing some continuity of care. Of course, it's not necessarily a straight up replacement. There are a lot of situations where it may not work as well, especially in areas of the country that don't have really stable broadband access, broadband internet access, or households that don't have, can't afford good internet access. But it can be a supportive tool. And I know that we have seen in many cases people, still being able to get education and tobacco cessation counseling and things like that through these telehealth services with minimal risk, or certainly with less risk. One of the pieces to the puzzle that was missing was pulmonary rehab. Back in the spring, we started doing a daily show here on COPD Navigator, where we changed the name to House Call, specifically because I had several people tell me that because gyms were shut down and everything else was shut down, they had lost access to their pulmonary rehab facilities. And for those of you who may not be aware, pulmonary rehab is one of the most powerful weapons that we have to combat the symptoms of COPD and dozens of other lung conditions too. But not only that, pulmonary rehab gives a degree of socialization and camaraderie and all that kind of stuff that, when you have a chronic illness, chronic condition, it can be pretty lonely, because if you're, especially in a case of something like COPD that doesn't really receive a lot of attention, it doesn't have a sexy marketing campaign around it, although we're coming up on COPD Awareness Month. So hopefully the foundation or NHLBI or somebody has something up their sleeve this year. We don't really have a well-known ribbon. The pink ribbon campaign, obviously, for breast cancer. We've got a lot of turquoise takeover stuff for lung cancer. The American Lung Association has done a great job with their advocacy efforts, but not a lot of people pay attention to COPD, and there's dozens of reasons for that. But the bottom line is, it can feel very lonely. Whoa! Hello, Olive. Everybody, Olive the cat. Olive, everybody. Forgot she was up there. It reminds me of a story one time that longtime friend of Navigator, member of Navigator, by the name of Karen told. Just getting everything back together here. She was doing a remote monitoring trial, and they were taking some samples. There was time for her to do her own readings and all that, and the cat jumped on her lap and startled her, and within a few minutes, the remote monitoring place had given her a call and said, "Your vital signs are all over the place. Are you okay? What's happening?" And it was just the cat. So that was Olive's contribution to the conversation, I guess. But moving back along, it can be pretty lonely in the face of a disease that not a lot of people know about, and it seems like not a lot of people care about. So a lot of folks were missing that socialization from pulmonary rehab, and that's why we came up with this idea of maybe social from a distance, so that we can maintain our social connections. Still got to get used to that, while again maintaining safety. But due to the efforts, thanks to the efforts of the Impact 2020 team, again led by the COPD Foundation, got to give a huge shout out to Stephanie Williams, who worked tirelessly for months to plan and organize and coordinate so many different efforts. Thanks to those efforts, thanks to that initiative, Medicare did finally add pulmonary rehab codes to eligible telehealth reimbursement lists. I don't know at the moment how many places are doing telehealth, because this has been within, I believe, the last week where this has been announced. So I don't know that, it takes a little bit of time for places to get their programs up and running. But honestly, this is going to be a game changer, obviously for folks with COPD. But as we go forward into this whole post-COVID-19 world, a lot of these folks are going to be needing these rehabilitation programs as well. My hope is, once we kind of dig past a lot of the political nonsense and a lot of the other stuff that has kind of gone on with this coronavirus crisis, I'm hopeful that we'll have a better understanding, or a better appreciation, I should say, for our lungs as a world, as a society, as all these groups. Because it's really weird. I've been struck by this even before the pandemic. I was kind of noodling around, why this might be. Respiratory stuff never really gets a lot of play. And like I said, with COPD, there's a certain degree where that, I don't want to use the word makes sense, because it's still not right. And it sounds like if I use the phrase makes sense, it's kind of an excuse. But it's understandable, because for a very long time, a lot of clinicians and all kinds of people really felt that people with lung cancer, people with COPD, brought this on themselves. And we see that a lot in a lot of other conditions too. Diabetes, if you have obesity, you should have just pushed away from the table, fatty. Well, you got COPD, you got lung cancer. Well, I guess you should have quit smoking, dummy. There was, I'm sad to say, there was a big push of that in clinical circles too. People who should have known better and should have been more encouraging. But even with things like asthma, we don't really pay a lot of attention to asthma. We don't really, as a healthcare system. I mean, of course, we have our advocacy groups and everything else. But as a healthcare system, we don't really pay attention to lung stuff. And I don't really know why, because back in the day, our respiratory professional organization, nationwide one, the AARC, had these videos where they would talk about, you can go 4 weeks without food in certain cases. You can often go days without water, but you're not going to last longer than a couple of minutes without air, without breathing. So it's really puzzling why respiratory conditions get such low priority as our system. I'm hopeful that having this major pandemic that affects, the more we learn about it, the more we know what it all affects. It certainly affects some heart stuff, but it's certainly best known for affecting lung stuff. I'm hopeful that we can start drawing more attention to lung issues and people who live with them. So the first step to that, again, is adding telehealth, or adding pulmonary rehab to telehealth services. I honestly think it's going to be a game changer. We had some places that were doing respiratory telehealth and pulmonary rehab telehealth prior to this, but this is going to bring that to a whole bunch more people. And I'm really, really hopeful that it sticks around after the crisis period has passed. Because really, Olive, I'll let you stay because you were not going to be obnoxious like the other ones are. Yeah, you get that feather quill. All right. One of the biggest barriers to pulmonary rehabilitation is transportation. People just can't get to programs, particularly in rural areas. I talked before about the upheaval in my life. My wife has taken her dream job about 4 hours north of here in a place called, come on, Olive, help me out a little bit. Beaver Island. So I've been kind of commuting, and we've been doing a long distance thing for a little while. But it's literally an island, but it's an island with 600 people on it. So statistically, there should be 10% of the population diagnosed. So that's 60 people, and probably as many as twice that number who have symptoms and have the condition, just haven't been diagnosed yet. So we're talking 120 people potentially with COPD, or with specifically COPD. 100 to 120 people, many of whom might benefit from a pulmonary rehabilitation program, but it's on an island. It's really challenging to get back and forth to the mainland on a regular basis, a couple times a week, like you would want to do for pulmonary rehabilitation. So the ability to potentially offer that via telehealth the health center there has got some, has some PT equipment. So there's like a treadmill, there's all that stuff. Being able to monitor that and get reimbursed for it, that's going to be a huge game changer, especially going forward. So hard to overstate the importance of that. So we're really fortunate, really lucky that the foundation was able to do that. And yeah, so there. All right. So like I said, I've been rambling on for a little while here, about 15 minutes. I don't really have a lesson plan for the day. This has been kind of a news. I was planning on doing kind of a news and update kind of thing. Like I said, I did want to throw that. Another thing from the COPD Foundation that I really wanted to talk about, and I'm actually going to get the link ready. That's the one thing I did plan ahead for a little bit. So, like I said in the post, I need a little practice here. It's been a minute since I've done any of this stuff. All right, why aren't the announcements coming through? Well, we can at least throw it into the watch party here. Maybe. There we go. So in the watch party, and what was I doing? Oh yeah, we're going to find the main video over on the COPD Navigator page. Feels like my computer's running slow too. I hope it doesn't have a virus. Oh, it did go through. Okay, went through twice. Normalcy. So, all right. So I'm seeing some comments now. The unified chat doesn't seem to be cooperating, even though all the lights are on. So, John, we are so about 20 minutes ago. Apologies for the delay there. We're mostly back. Like I said, it's been a difficult time. I want to try to get this back going. I'm trying to find a good mix. The last time we did this, which was about 6 weeks ago, I asked a couple of people questions about, what would be good formats and things like that. So right now what I'm looking at doing is a mix of Facebook Lives and then also our Zoom interactive things, which work really well for tobacco cessation and things like that. We're looking at doing every Wednesday. So I'm still, believe it or not, locking down a couple of schedule things. Just trying to figure out what our frequencies are going to be and all that kind of fun stuff. But we are essentially back. I'll say that much. Oh, Joe, that's very kind of you. Hearing and seeing you means a lot. I really appreciate that. It means a lot that people turned out tonight. It means a lot that people stopped by, and it means that people are asking, "Are we back?" and all that stuff. So this is it's a support group all around. So probably a good thing to come back. I just want to try to make sure I do it the right way and everything else. But so what I was getting to, and what this link is for, tomorrow. Again, our friends at the COPD Foundation have put together a webinar on Medicare enrollment. We're coming up on open enrollment season, and I know from a clinical standpoint, a clinician standpoint, somebody who works with the thing pretty frequently, just about every day, deal with Medicare in one form or another, it can be really difficult and complicated. So I can only imagine what it's like for people who are looking at enrolling in Medicare for the first time, or looking at, should you go with a traditional Medicare and a Medicare Part D plan? Should you get Medicare Advantage, what are the pros and cons. It's wildly complicated. It's far too complicated, but that's a political discussion for a different day. But the COPD Foundation has, reading from their post here, as the new enrollment season begins, are you prepared to make informed decisions about Medicare for you and your family? Join the COPD Foundation and speakers from the Medicare Rights Center as we provide valuable information on Medicare coverage Thursday, October 22nd at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. On their post, they also have a link to a survey where you can kind of get some information, find out what you know, maybe find out what you don't know and what you might need to ask. But the link that I posted is to register for their webinar, which I'm sure will be absolutely fantastic. Again, the foundation puts together really nice resources for the entire COPD community. That's probably something that you're not going to want to miss if you have any questions at all about best frequency is 105.9 on the FM dial. Around here, I'm partial to 107.7, our classic rock station, but we've got NPR on 102.1. It's on my preset. Been on my preset so long I don't remember what it is, but they had some good classical stuff going on there. And speaking of Beaver Island, there is WVBI up there. Let's see if I can find that frequency. That is 100.1, or you can go to it's a complicated website, but you can listen to them online. I hope to eventually, when I move up there and join my wife, I hope to have a little radio show up there. It's a community run deal. They do a lot of public access kind of stuff. I want to have a little fun with that. So where was I? Yeah, we're talking about the webinar tomorrow. Oh, one other thing that I want to cover real quick, and I'm going to pull up this email. As many of you know, we have, as part of our Zoom shows and stuff, we have done Harmonicas for Health, which is another program that was started by the COPD Foundation. We just basically, as they say, good artists create and great artists steal. So we've stolen a whole bunch of stuff from the COPD Foundation. Although I always try to give them credit because they do fantastic work, and none of us in the community would be where we are without them. They are putting together a video for COPD Awareness Month featuring harmonicas. Got an update a couple days ago from Jane Martin, who's carrying the ball on this one. We're going to be doing the song You Are My Sunshine on the harmonica. Some other video footage, a brief narrative. It's a little easier song to play. It's got international appeal. Might be able to find some more players to do. And they're asking for anybody who has a harmonica. Oh, I do have it. Sweet. I was thinking ahead. Holding it upside down. We're going to be playing America the Beautiful. Or no, that was the original one. They changed it to You Are My Sunshine. So what I will do is, let's see, there's a Google Drive. So, I tell you what, if you're interested, send me a message, and we will, because there's a whole packet of stuff. There's a consent form and the music and all that kind of stuff. Let's see, I'm going to try to add some of it to certainly our COPD Navigator Facebook group. Let's see. So I'm going to go in cold here, and I'm going to try You Are My Sunshine. So we're going to have a whole bunch of people doing this. I messed it up. I'm going to start over. So that is what we're looking for. We're looking for people to play You Are My Sunshine on the old harmonica. Hey, there's John coming through with the voice of Beaver Island WVBI. Will most likely regret this, but count me in. I didn't get the dang thing to let it sit around. I didn't make the voice this time. I'm surprised, John. You got a nice voice. I'm surprised they didn't let you in on that one. I even failed on the Masked Singer because they didn't want to look at me. So there you go. So yeah, that's going to be some fun. It's going to be a nice little awareness tool. Again, anything we can do to highlight COPD and the importance of COPD awareness and research is absolutely critical. So anybody who wants to participate, again, I'm going to try and get as much information as possible on the page and in the group. But if you're looking for it and you can't find it, please let me know and I will get it to you. I'll get you an email link or whatever, the link to the drive that has all this stuff in it. And we will get that handled. So let's see. I knew I wanted to talk about the Medicare deal. I wanted to talk about the Harmonicas. Again, looking for any questions out there. Got a few people still watching, hanging out with us. Thank you very much for taking the time here. What else we got? Where? There's my friend James. We may disagree, but he's still a good guy. Let's see. James is an incredible advocate for his folks with COPD out on the West Coast. Has done a great job setting up programs and getting people access to the resources they need. So he does fantastic work out there. Catherine checking in. Thank you. Yes, long time no see. Long time since I've had the mental fortitude, I suppose, to pull all this stuff together. And even then, it's about 80%. So then there's your piano recital. The votes have been tabulated. Yes, that's something I actually just off to the side here. I have my keyboard that has as yet gone unused, but I had a couple other things pop up. As life does in the fall here with our youngest is still in high school. So we've been doing all virtual classroom stuff during that time. Plus, looking at, job stuff and what can we do to facilitate going back and forth to the Great Beaver Island, everything else. So on and so forth. So piano has been on a little bit of a delay, but I do look forward to pulling that together sometime soon this fall and the winter. So James does ask, have you been using the breather inspiratory muscle training device at all? Formally, no. I have one about a year, maybe it's probably more like 2 years ago now, because I think I was still downstairs in the old office at work. They had like a free trial deal on Facebook where you signed up for their mailing list and you got one. I didn't know much about it at the time. Didn't really know much about inspiratory muscle training. It's one of those things that, as limited knowledge as we have about COPD and stuff as it is, that's even further down the list as far as research and things like that. So I haven't really been using it in people. I've played around with it myself. It seems to work. And the more research we do into inspiratory muscle training, the more that it really does seem to work. So it's something that has been on my radar, kind of on the periphery for a while. But if anybody out there watching this, listening to this, has any experience with the breather, I would love to hear more about it. I'm sure James would as well. It's one of those things that looks like it has a whole bunch of potential because with COPD, we focus a lot on exhalation. We know the obstruction in COPD is that you can't get your air out fast enough, right? So we focus on things like pursed lip breathing to help flush out air and all that kind of stuff. We focus on things like positive expiratory pressure, devices like the Aerobica and the Acapella. Not sponsored by any of those companies, or just used as an example here. We focus a lot on those things because we want to improve that exhalation. But there is a growing body of evidence that tells us if we're able to strengthen the inspiratory muscles, then it does make the entire respiratory cycle a little bit more effective. Um, so it's a very long way of saying no. I'm not using it personally in any of my folks, but only because, well, mostly pandemic. I haven't really been doing a lot with a lot of people, although, well, we're slowly starting to come back, and then now all of a sudden our cases are spiking throughout the state and in our county. So who knows what's going to be happening in the next week or so. I would like to use it. It's just not something we've integrated yet. Speaking of research and such, while anybody else might be getting their questions going here, we'll take a look and see if there are any other comments floating around in various parts of Facebook land. Because again, I'm not getting a real good unified chat like I usually do. But speaking of research and stuff, this is always a good time to take a spin through what is new in the world of COPD research. It's one of those things that I like to do. You know, when we do the regular weekly to bi-weekly program here on Facebook and YouTube, I like to get some of these out, some of these informations out there. Right now, this year has been mostly COVID most of the time, of course. We have seen, things like the American Thoracic Society meeting that went virtual this spring. That was mostly COVID stuff. We have the chest conference that's going on right now, entirely virtual. That's been a lot of COVID stuff. What's really been interesting there is one of the things that I'm potentially getting involved with and I'm trying to influence and encourage is GOLD, the international organization that does a lot of research coordination and publishes strategy guidelines and things like that. Looking at better ways to do outreach and dissemination of research. And again, the COPD Foundation is a Pathfinder organization here. About a year ago, they did a research project about best practices and dissemination for patients and caregivers. But we also know that there are huge gaps in, for example, getting information to primary care providers. So a couple weeks ago, well, we'll back up a little bit. Last year, Gold had approached me and said, would you be willing to come to the American Thoracic Society conference and record a series of podcasts? I've worked with Rebecca Decker, who's the program director of Gold, a couple of times. Been fortunate enough to work with some of the people in the scientific committee. So, they know of my work here with Navigator and that I like to gab for a while. They said, well, maybe we'll have to get some of the science people on board and let's make some podcasts. And then COVID happened and there was no ATS conference this spring. But we still did put together a podcast with Dr. Antonio Anzueto from San Antonio, who again is one of the leading voices in the leading physician voices in COPD care. And we did do one podcast about the importance of preventing COPD exacerbations, those flare-ups that can really do a number on lung function. So in discussing that experience with Rebecca, we're hopeful that we can convince some of the powers that be at Gold to do a little bit more stuff like that. So one of the interesting sessions that I saw at Chest this week was actually the use of social media, including podcasts and things like that, to get messages out. And I've been reading a couple of different studies that talk about, particularly in emergency medicine, there are a lot of physicians who use podcasts and it actually influences their practice. So hopefully we can see some more of that stuff coming soon. So if you would like to see improved dissemination of information from a group like Gold, drop them an email and say, hey, let's do some podcasts. And I know a guy. So going back a little bit, James saying, right as you stated, right as you started speaking, I got interrupted. We've started to use them and are seeing some good positive results. PN Medical has some great online tutorials and support due to COVID-19. Yeah, I think that's yeah. Think that's where I got mine from back in the day. And yeah, I'm again, the more I read about inspiratory muscle training in general, the more I think it's going to be really a positive thing. So I'm glad to hear that you're seeing good positive results with it because that means I was right. And who doesn't like to be right? But seriously though, any kind of new tool or anything like that we get to help tamp down symptoms and everything else, it's fantastic. Catherine says, I found that when my sink was clogged and I would plunge it every day, 3 to 4 times a day, it really helped me breathe a lot easier. Well, yeah, that's not necessarily an exercise that I would recommend. Because I hope nobody's sink's clogging that much ever. But we know when, how do I phrase this? So when you have COPD, particularly emphysema, some degree of emphysema or not, your main muscle of breathing, which is your diaphragm and sits right here, tends to flatten out and get a little less effective, a little weaker, a little less effective, all that stuff. And so that means the rest of the muscles in your upper body have to take over that work of breathing. And that's why it can be really part of the reason that can be why partially it's so hard to breathe sometimes, because this is not what your upper body muscles are designed to do, right? So in order to make it a little bit easier to breathe, you've got to strengthen them. So if you're doing a plunger thing couple times a day, then yeah, you're going to start building up. At first, it's going to be probably pretty tiresome and you're going to get tired faster. But as you start to build up these muscles, first of all, your body uses oxygen a little bit more efficiently. And secondly, you're going to have more support as you're working to breathe. So, when I talk to people who don't have access to pulmonary rehab or things like that, that's what I recommend is upper body training a lot. Sitting on the couch watching TV, lifting up soup cans, things like that. I suppose plunging a sink fits that bill a little bit. But hand weights, resistance bands, these things, they don't have to cost. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg on them. I know. Walmart, I'm pretty sure, our local regional Walmart similar chain called Meyer. I know they have 2 pound dumbbells that are like $2.50 each. So $5 and you can get little hand weights and you can be working your arms and you're working your chest wall, your pecs, and doing all these things to help you more effectively, more efficiently breathe when that diaphragm's not working very well. So Catherine, that's why it probably helped you breathe a lot better. Plus, the exercise, depending on the kind of COPD you have, the what we call the phenotype, that kind of activity may well have knocked stuff loose, like when we do the vibrating chest, the vest, or that kind of stuff, or simply just being active can make you cough and clear out those secretions a little bit better. So, yeah, you kind of had a really effective whole body workout there. So, that worked well. So let's see what else we got going on here. Thank you, Linda. Linda checking in from Central Michigan, where I think they're still having some surges as well. Linda, a great advocate for the form of COPD known as alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, the genetic form of COPD as it's often known. Does a fantastic golf outing every year and does her part to get everything going with advocacy and awareness. So let's see here. What do we have for... Oh, here we go. Now this is something we've talked about on the program before. But let's see, about 15 hours ago, this is an article from newsmedical.net. I don't know exactly who that is, but it's also on a site called Medical Express. And it's not like a research study, so I have no real reason to distrust this article. Temple University has treated the first patient in a multi-center international clinical trial using the Rejuvenair system for the treatment of patients with moderate to severe chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So this is a new medical device that they actually have an investigational exemption from, done by Dr. Jerry Kreiner at Temple, who wow, I mean, you talk about the big voices like Dr. Anzueto. Jerry Kreiner is certainly up there on the Mount Rushmore of pulmonology. What Rejuvenair does is it essentially freezes, like cryogenically freezes bits of your airway. Delivers metered doses of liquid nitrogen spray at a temperature of negative 196 degrees Celsius. Which is awfully cold. Can't remember exactly how far that goes down to absolute zero, but that's awfully cold. And what it does is it freezes some of the damaged airway epithelial cells, the lining of the airways, that where a lot of the breakdown happens with chronic bronchitis. There are little cilia, little hairs that kind of wave the junk and the mucus back up and help you cough it out, and those don't work as well. They produce too much mucus, all that kind of stuff. So what happens is they get frozen, they die, and then new ones grow back. And then the idea is the new ones that grow back don't have the damage and are able to perform a little bit more normally. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works. What they're looking at two main criteria here. They're looking at how many exacerbations you have in 12 months after treatment, and then they compare that to before to see if they can knock down any of those exacerbations. And then patient-reported outcomes, which I really like. They're looking at the improvement in what's called the St. George's Respiratory Questionnaire, which is basically a big, long survey about symptoms and their impact on your life. So, like I said, real practical stuff. I really like that. So that, the bad news is, in order to find out what the exacerbation rate is over 12 months, you have to wait for 12 months to get all that data, and then probably another year or so to do all the calculations and publishing and all that stuff. So the good news is this is a potentially really exciting treatment. The bad news is we won't know exactly how exciting it is for a couple of years yet. So, but definitely something to keep an eye on. And if Dr. Kreiner's involved, I wouldn't bet against it. That's for darn sure. Here is a good, timely, topical thing. This is from about a week ago. This is from a website called COPD News Today, where I get quite a few. 459 below in Fahrenheit, John says. So that's the equivalent in that's how cold your cilia are getting. So it's called the Rejuvenair, Catherine. Rejuvenair. I tell you what, let me see if I can. Here's one with a nice picture of Dr. Kreiner. So let me get this link up, and I will copy that into. See if I can copy it into the chat here, and because Rejuvenair is one of those things that's probably difficult. Well, it is difficult to spell. So we got some links up there depending on where you're watching us in the watch party or on the main video page. Just look for the picture of the very friendly gentleman with the white hair, Dr. Gerald Kreiner from Temple Medical Center. So going back a little bit here, the other news item we've got off the bat here is no link between face masks and carbon dioxide poisoning, even in people with COPD. So, there's... I'm almost reluctant to bring this up because I really don't like to make this stuff political, but unfortunately the climate in which we live, somehow wearing face masks has become a very hot button political item. And there's been a lot of misconception and a lot of misunderstanding. Actually, I was talking with a gentleman today, one of my patients, and I said, as the air gets colder, as we start getting into wintertime here, you may experience more symptoms because cold air is dry air. So I said, even a year ago, before all this nonsense went down, I would tell people wear some kind of mask, wear some kind of face covering, a bandana, a scarf, whatever it is, because it's going to help trap some of your exhaled air and pre-warm some of the stuff you're breathing in. So, but a lot of people who don't really have much knowledge about either on the clinical side or the patient side don't really understand a lot of how this stuff works. So there's been this big concern about, well, if I'm wearing this thing over my face all the time, if the holes are small enough to block the virus, which is again a whole other thing, are they not going to let carbon dioxide out? Am I gonna suffocate myself and all that stuff? So a team from the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine conducted a study in 15 healthy individuals and 15 veterans with significant airflow obstruction, what they're calling severe COPD. We did not intend to compare healthy versus diseased individuals. I don't like that phrase, but to assess the effect of using a surgical mask in two distinct populations. Selecting folks with COPD because they're at higher risk of carbon dioxide retention anyway. They just basically did blood gas sampling before and then immediately after a 6-minute walk test, which is an endurance test where you kind of shuttle back and forth and walk as far as you can over the course of 6 minutes. And they found that the effects are minimal. No significant change in carbon dioxide or oxygen level was observed after wearing the mask at rest for 5 minutes and 30 minutes, both in healthy people and those with COPD. They did find, probably not terribly surprising, oxygen levels did go down a little bit in the folks with COPD, but the researchers said that it was not a major change. I'm wondering, let's see if I can pull up the study and find out exactly how much it changed. Oh, let's see, methods and findings. Oh, do they not have the actual number? Where's the PO2? So they haven't released. Oh, here it is. All right. So in the healthy individuals, they did not measure oxygen, oddly enough. Okay. So the folks with COPD did the 6-minute walk test 30 minutes after. They found that it did go down about 27 millimeters of mercury, which can be a lot. I mean, it depends on. I'd want to look a little bit more at some of these measurements because they don't really make a lot of sense. So I'm going to withhold judgment on that as far as whether I agree that the loss of oxygen is significant or not. But they measured, let's see, it looks like they measured the carbon dioxide. Oh, they did both. They did Untitled and they did with a blood gas sample. The amount of change in carbon dioxide was truly minimal. At most it changed 5 millimeters of mercury, which you can probably recover from that within about 5 minutes. I mean, truly minimal. So, thank you, Susan, for the nice welcome back there. So Linda asks, do you think masks dry out your throat? Noticing after being out and wearing a mask more, I came down with a sore throat. Just curious. Don't get out much and social distance as much as possible, which are two of the leading things. I was explaining to somebody today, there's this idea called the Swiss cheese theory, where you have like 5 pieces of Swiss cheese and these are all your mitigation techniques. It's your social distance, it's your mask, it's your all these things. You might have something that gets through one or two layers, but the more layers you have, the less likely it's going to get through to you. I guess it's kind of a risk management technique anyway, but it was specifically done with COVID. So Linda is using her good Swiss cheese technique here. Do I think masks dry out your throat? I would say, again, from personal experience, they can. But I don't necessarily think it's the mask itself. I think it's a change in breathing style. Again, anecdotally, I have not done a peer-reviewed controlled trial or anything like that. When I wear my mask, when I'm at work or, when I'm out and about, all that stuff, when I'm wearing my mask, I notice that for some reason, that I'm not even conscious of it, and I'm just now realizing it within the last week or so, particularly with drier air coming in, drier, colder air, I breathe through my mouth more when I'm wearing a mask. And I think that's probably mostly what it is, because normally your breath is humidified by all kinds of structures inside your nose. Yeah, there are huge, it is a real windy passage in there, lots of blood vessels, lots of mucous membranes, all that kind of stuff. And that's your main method of humidifying air so that it's safe for your lungs. When you breathe through your mouth, you kind of bypass a lot of that stuff. And so I personally, when I wear a mask and I'm breathing through that, I'm bypassing a lot of that, and it does dry out my mouth. It hasn't really gotten to the point where I have a sore throat, but I could easily see that when the air temperature is getting down into the 20s or 30s, even above zero. I could definitely see where that could happen, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes this winter. So Susan brings up that she gets dizzy and sweaty sometimes when I wear a mask. I feel you on the sweat for sure. Wearing a mask isn't something that like anybody's super excited to do, and I get that. And I don't want to be that guy that's like the mask. I want to be a mask cheerleader, but I want to do it in a practical way. Like, yeah, you should be excited. Look at this chance to show off your individuality, and you put your bling on the mask, and all that kind of stuff. They're a necessary evil. They're necessary in the vast majority of cases, but they're a necessary evil. The dizziness, I would like to explore that. If I were your clinician, I would want to explore that a little bit more, because again, in the absence of any evidence that there are physiological changes like carbon dioxide buildup, if they were able to prove that your carbon dioxide did build up with a mask, that would explain some of the dizziness. But since we don't really have strong evidence that anything like that happens, I would want to look for things that are specific to your case. People with claustrophobia have difficulty wearing masks. People, who have what they call sensory processing disorders and who don't like things touching their face. It makes you anxious, even if you are not by nature an anxious person. If you've got all these things going on that you're not used to, you can get anxious and you can get worked up. And, that's one of your body's reactions to being anxious is getting dizzy and breathing faster and all that stuff. And if you're hyperventilating, then maybe you can get dizzy because you're blowing off too much carbon dioxide. And again, that's not to say it's all in your head or anything like that. That's just how it works. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. So I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. I'm not at all saying if that happens to you, it's all in your head or anything like that. Because that's not the case. It's just, like I said, if I were your clinician, I would want to dig into a little bit more of the specifics of your case and your history and all that stuff, to find a more likely reason for that. Still encourage you to wear a mask whenever possible. I know that's a tough one, but will the webinar link be here when you close the broadcast? It should. And again, it's also on the COPD Navigator page, Joe, so you should be able to find it there. And it's also on the COPD Foundation page. So Catherine asks a couple of questions here. Lung capacity is 13%. What would you measure? What would it measure with the mask on? Can't say. It's couple of factors there. You know, your lung capacity is not 13% out of 100%. It's 13% of what would be predicted of somebody of your height and your age and your biological sex. Um, Adding, depending on the kind of mask that you're wearing, you may have a little bit more expiratory resistance. So, you know, if you were to put the spirometer outside of the mask and blow through that, you would probably get a slightly different reading, but it is honestly impossible to predict that. It's going to vary depending on the kind of mask. It's going to vary depending on how you feel that day. There are tons and tons of factors, even under the best of circumstances, that affect pulmonary function testing. Having a mask, you're not really going to be able to figure that one. Catherine also says, extremely difficult time wearing I constantly pull it down and put back up when around people. And yeah, you know, that's common too. And that was, you know, I'll be real frank. That was one of my concerns before this thing really blew up. And I think even Dr. Fauci alluded to this at some point. It's not, you know, just like we talk about, we need to have spirometry when we're doing COPD testing and all that stuff. It can't just be spirometry. It's got to be good quality spirometry. Similarly, you can't just wear a mask. You have to wear a mask properly. And that can be difficult for a lot of folks for reasons that we talked about before. And then, you know, you get into the idea of, well, if you're pulling it up and down a lot and you're not washing your hands enough, you might be contaminating it. And so is it doing any good? So that's where some of the controversy has come from with the masks, because it's not just wearing it, it's wearing it properly. And again, I'm not, you know, trying to hammer anything bad or anything like that. It is really difficult. Yeah. And I also see that you mentioned glasses fogging up. Well, for a very long while, I was wearing my glasses regularly again. And for a combination of reasons, that I have not yet worked up the gumption to go to the eye doctor and have somebody standing and breathing in my face for a half hour, 45 minutes. And I'm tired of my glasses fogging up. I started wearing my contacts a lot again. So I definitely feel that pain. I definitely, as a public health and respiratory guy, I encourage you to wear your mask regularly and well, all the time. Try to avoid touching it. I know it's easy for me to say, and I'm not minimizing any issue. I just, you know, that's the ethical thing to say, is I gotta, you know, recommend that you wear it properly as much as possible. So, but these are all very, very valid, very common concerns. So, welcome in, Kim. Kim, I don't know if you were watching before, but we're gonna have the COPD Foundation is doing a harmonica video of "You Are My Sunshine." Asking for as many people as possible to record it. We're gonna be getting the information hopefully into the group and onto the page within the next day or so. The deadline is coming up on November 6th. We got a couple of weeks to go yet, but we want to try and get some recordings done of people playing on the harmonica there and get them sent off to the foundation. For those of you who may not know, Kim is a fantastic advocate for Harmonicas for Health, all that kind of stuff. Locally here in the southwestern Michigan area, been a huge part of our Zoom Harmonicas for Health stuff in the Ready Room, which will be coming back online pretty soon here too. Thinking right now what we're looking at is a alternating Facebook Live with the Zooms. One week is a Facebook Live, next week is a Zoom tobacco cessation, then a Facebook Live, and then harmonicas. So that's my tentative plan right now. I'm just gonna see how that works out with a couple other things of work and so on and so forth. Use your hand sanitizer because you are going to touch your mask. Yes, that is another part of the Swiss cheese there, another slice of cheese. Keeping your hand hygiene going is incredibly important. Where we think now that some of the fears of this coronavirus living on surfaces are not as bad as we thought. But that doesn't mean that if you're touching all this stuff up here and then don't wash your hands and then touch your eyes or touch your mask, all that stuff, doesn't mean they can't transfer. So definitely be using your hand sanitizer and washing and all that stuff as much as you possibly can. All right. So where are we at here? Kim, you'll be looking for it. Great. Thank you. Oh, that is okay. My screen froze for a minute here, and I was really concerned about the look I had on my face. It looked like my eye was falling apart or something. So what do we have here? Oh, there's a comment from Karen over in the Facebook group that I have not seen yet. So let me see if I can pull that up here. We're a little bit past the top of the hour. So if this is the last chance to get some questions in here, if anybody's got anything else on their mind, last chance for at least a week anyway. Let's see. Karen, so sorry to be late. Yay. No one ever has to apologize for being late to these things. These are things that I'm happy to do. Like I said, I'm honored that people showed up at all. This is not a date. This is not an appointment. This is not a must-see TV or anything like that. I appreciate that you showed up at all, and hopefully we'll be able to do this more often. So let's see where we're at here. We're gonna be, like I said, we're gonna be wrapping things up here in just a minute. We'll cruise around here to the two streams and see if anything else of interest has popped up. It was good to get a little bit of some news going, some good news coming out, research studies happening, all that kind of fun stuff. Great to see the projects that the COPD Foundation are putting out there. Don't forget that Medicare seminar tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern time with the link on our Facebook page, COPD Navigator, or at the COPD Foundation page itself. I think not seeing a lot more questions coming through, so I think we're going to go ahead and call that a live stream. Like I said, I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight, spending some of your evening here. This has been a rough it's been a rough year in general, but it's been a particularly rough couple of months. I'm really looking forward to trying to get back into the swing of things. Well, Jeannie, we're gonna be back more regularly now, unless other catastrophes strike. I never want to be too overconfident, knocking on wood here. But you're welcome to watch through. We're going to be keeping an eye out on our Navigator page and in the group for some updates about what the sequence is going to be with some of the live and some of the Zoom and all that stuff, so that we can meet everybody where they are and where they need and all that stuff. And it's going to be a good time. We're going to, like I said, as John pointed out, I think it was normalcy, if I said it right. We're going to try and bring some of that back, at least to the Facebook world. So once again, thank you everybody for coming out and spending some of your Wednesday here. Looking forward to talking with everybody again very soon. Until then, my name is Mike Hess. This has been COPD Navigator House Call. I want you all out there to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, keep breathing lightly. Until next time, we'll see you. Maybe get a couple moments extra. There we go. All right, folks. Now we're signing out after a little bit of a glitch there. But have a good night, everybody.